Americans have a rich history both in Louisiana, Florida parishes history and Americans history. What are some of the stories? Who are some of the people? What is unique about those stories and people? Let's find out. This live stream Zoom session will explore the history of African Americans in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. On the third Tuesday of each month at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, I will choose a different topic and invite special guests to explore the rich history of African Americans in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. Good evening, everyone. This is Antoinette. I'm so happy to be in my own studio, and I'm just so happy that I can kind of sit at home and teach. And that's what I want to do, share things that I have found. My focus tonight is going to be on the history, African American history in the Florida parishes. So I'm a one-person operation today. So I just need you all to bear with me while I try to operate everything on my own by myself. I know I can do it because I got a lot that I do want to share. And what I want to talk about tonight, I have so many genealogies, discoveries in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. I just want to share some of my findings through genealogy. If it wasn't for researching my own family history, and I'm at 30 years now, researching my own family history, there is no ending to it. I guess you just go until you just can't do it anymore. Or sometime, I don't think you ever get tired. I really don't, because it's a passion. It's a passion of wanting to know where you're from, who am I, who are my kinfolks, who are my ancestors. So what I did tonight, well, earlier today, I put a PowerPoint presentation together that would basically help me stay on task, because I have so much I want to share that I'm more than sure I will be skipping all over the place. I don't want to do that. I really want to stay focused and share with you some of what I have found. So let me just go ahead and share my screen so everybody can see it. Okay. I just love this picture. When people say a picture speaks volumes, 1,000 words, that is so true. Genealogy and history discoveries of African Americans in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. Let me go on to the next slide. All right. I got to do it like this. I just want to kind of start from the beginning of just talk to some people who may know, some people who may not know. What is the eight Florida parishes, the parishes that make up the Louisiana, Florida parishes? East Baton Rouge Parish, West Feliciana, East Feliciana, Tangipahoa Parish, St. Tammany Parish, St. Helena, and Washington Parish. Now, my family history connects to at least, I know 7 of them. I haven't found anything in the West Feliciana Parish, but that's where my husband's family is from, on the Gilmore side. So we don't know. Some things I want to talk about, and I just want to give you an overview of some of the points of discussions that I want to talk about tonight and topics that I'll be covering. Melinda Tom Lawson, the Choctaw Indians of genealogy, because that's a very fascinating history. It is a history that is not talked about as much. It hasn't been that much documented on their history, but I have found some things. The Black schools, Robert Free Bob Vernon genealogy, African American families in the Florida parishes, African Americans, Midwife, African American photographs, the Great Migration, African American pioneers, African-American funeral programs, the strawberry pickers, Black farmers, and Black cemeteries. This is just some of the topics I picked tonight to talk about because I'm exploring. When I explore my history, I'm exploring everybody else's history. Um, I feel that over the 30 years of my research, I haven't found a lot of information. Um, that was, and it sort of reminded me of when I first started researching in 1994. But I know that I had an obligation to change that so that if anyone who was looking for family members, what did I want to see? And I'll talk about that later in my presentation. But it's a very, why study this? Because like I said, there's so much more. There's a culture, there's the history, there's events, there's the people, there's the food, there's the music, and there's even religious practices. There's a civil rights movement that took place in the Florida parishes. And so these are the type of subjects that comes out of researching your own family history. You start to learn more about the local history. All right, this is food for thought. We shaped and established strong communities in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. And that is so true. Many African Americans was here even before some of these parishes was formed. So there's a long, I can speak for my family. My family was in St. Helena, Livingston, and part of Washington Parish before they settled in Tangipahoa Whole Parish. So when I'm researching my family history, like most people that is from this area, I had to start off in St. Helena, looking for my family history and learn about those communities that they built. All right, I want to talk about a summary of history of Esau and Melinda Tom Lawson. Melinda Tom Lawson was born in Clinton, Louisiana, to Indian Tom Swain and Sally, sorry about that typo there, Sally Sustain in 1853. Melinda was one of the Mississippi Choctaws. She picked cotton, she washed, she ironed for the Reeves, the Ricks hotels, and the Campbell Hotel. Esau was born before the Civil War. Let me, going too fast. According to the 1870 census, United States 1870 census, federal census, he was 22 years old, and he was a laborer living in a house with A.D. Hankel and Harriet Hankel in Ward 1, Tangipahoa, Louisiana. Esau was the head of the first, and when I was really thinking about his family, if they only knew some of the contributions that he have made to the history here. He was the head of the first public school building for colored children. He was also the head of the first Old Fellow Hall, being in amen for colored children, colored people. Esau and Melinda was the parents of Sally, Ida, Walter, Robert, E. Rosa, Willie, Eddie, Arthur, Mary, Chauncey, Booker T, and Viola. And here's such a beautiful picture of Melinda. Melinda, and I know that's her sister to the right of me. And I think I forgot this daughter. I think, yeah, Ida. That's what I was told, Ida. But I want to read some of these questions that she was really in the matter of Melinda, Mississippi Choctaw. Now, I found that year that they say she was born didn't add up, 1807. She's saying, and my father was a full-blooded Indian, and she lists that she was living in a mint, but I just don't see her being 1807. Esau was born in 1848, between 1848 and 1852. There's no way she could have been born in 1807. But she said that her father's name was Indian Tom, and he was full-blooded. If living, state the post office address. If dead, state the date and the place of his death. And she said that she didn't know. Line number 8, Melinda said her mother was Sally Substain, full-blooded. So she said that both of her parents was full-blooded Indians, Choctaws. Line 9, if living, state where she didn't know where. I think she said her mother died in Chicago. Yeah, she did say that in 1895. That's where her mom passed away. But just looking at these documents and reading what she was answering, the questions that she was answering, so and I do want to note that over in the Reeds community, Esau was one of the very first people to buy land in that community, and then he started selling it to other people and giving his children land, a plot over there, a plot or lot. But I found that to be, he was a very active man in the community, very active. And although you may follow the genealogy, but sometimes when a person have been involved with so many things like he have been involved with in the community, it's just it's a great piece of history. And sometimes that little bit of piece of history help us to really learn more about the history that we do not know. Because most of our families ancestors who was held as slaves, they wasn't documented in many cases. Not saying that there was, if you found them in the succession of the person who owned them, in their estate records, who they was being sold to, how much they appraised for, if they had children, and their ages. And sometimes you'll find that even in some of the owners' diaries, you may find some things that will, some documents that will talk about your family a little bit more in detail. If we look at this document here, Gulfport, Mississippi, February 25th, 1916. And Melinda Lawson, she was living in Amet, Louisiana. And you can basically see like the little seal that's around there. And I was happy that I scanned these records because I really wanted to look as authentic as it possibly could look. Excuse me. Had to get something for my throat. Now, all of us can talk about the Great Migration, because I know my family, some of my family members on the Harrell side, they left the South, and never, in some cases, never to return. Did some of your family migrate? The Great Migration was one of the largest movements of people in the United States history. 6 million Black people moved from the American South to Northern, Midwest, and Western states, roughly from the 1910 until the 1970s. I know that my Aunt Bertha and 2 of her brothers left, and they went up to Chicago. And that's how the family who migrated to Chicago, they got their start by going to family members that was already established. And most of the time, that's how that happened. One family would go, get established, provide a place to stay for the next family that comes up. And it was just rotating. And I guess that was a beautiful time, because when you think about it, families had to stay together. They stayed together. And I wish that we learned that right now. Let's talk a little bit about Free Bob. When I first moved here, I met Free Bob's descendant, and I learned more about his story. And really, I just said, his story needs to be a book. Somebody in their family needs to write a book about Free Bob. Free Bob was born in 1832 in Rankin County, Mississippi. He was born a slave. He died in July of 1915 in Tangipahoa Parish. He was the father of 17 children. And one thing I do want to express a lot, talk about, Free Bob purchased a lot of land right here in Tangipahoa Parish. And when each one of his children became grown and got married and was ready to start their own families, he gave each one of his children 100 acres. That community, Vernon Town, which is an unincorporated town, but it is still where the Vernon family stay today. They are still living on the land that their ancestor, who was born in 1832, enslaved. They are still living on that land. Let me give a shout out to the Vernon family, because that's what we need to be holding on to, the land. Teaching the young people in the family the importance of the land. And just let me also point out that not only did he donate a gift to his children, 100 acres, he donated land for a church and Mount Canaan School and the cemetery. And as the oral history that was passed down from one generation to another, the story goes that Free Bob couldn't read or write, but he kept a lot of books around him. I guess as many books as he could possibly get in his possessions. But he believed in education. He believed in building a community. And he did just that. When you think about it, a school, a church, the cemetery, all the land, basically living off the land with all the food, the vegetables, the livestock. They was very self-sufficient people. And if that town would have became an incorporated town, that would remind me of communities like Rosewood. So this family should be very proud of the history of Robert Free Bob Vernon. Arthur Tasker. Now, I don't know how many young people or people living especially in Tangipahoa Parish. Especially, let me just try to get my little page where I want it to be. Especially if you live in Tangipahoa Parish. I suggest that you explore where you live, explore the history, explore the historic land museums. Just take a family trip and learn about the community, especially if your ancestors was part of that community. Go back. Go walk that land. Go talk to family members that's still living on the land. That's very important. When you go back, you learn so much. When I went back to learn about my own family history, this is how I learned about Arthur Tasker. Arthur Tasker became the first African-American mayor of Ponchatoula, Louisiana in 1873 to the spring of 1974. Now, there has not been an African-American mayor of Ponchatoula since 1874. Arthur was born between 1829 and 1835 in Virginia or Maryland. And prior to the war between the states, he was a slave on the widow McCarroll and lived about 3 miles from Ponchatoula. This is history that we all should be learning. This is the history that makes up the fabric of the Florida parishes. But one thing I do want to point out before I get too far in it, I made a note to myself. The reason that I see that there's a lack of the study of African American history here is because there's not any genealogy societies or historical associations that focus on the study of African American history in the Florida parishes. Now, with that, it can be anybody that's willing to study their own family history with a real strong passion and desire for it. You will learn about the records that's in the courthouse. You will learn about what records, what genealogical records you can find in the library or in the community. Because I found a lot of family pictures in the community, other people had photographs. So don't think because you feel like you have exhausted all of your energy, you can't find any more photographs. There is not any more to be found. That is not true. You don't know what could be in other places. African American funeral programs tells a story. And we all know, and I just want to note that for those that may want to know, when did these African American funeral programs start to develop? Well, if you think about it, back in the earlier times of our history, when someone that was Black passed away, you did, unless you was a well accepted person by the white community, your death could have been announced in the newspaper. Now that can be different from place to place, from county to county, from parish to parish, from paper to paper. But I do know that for the most part, the earliest funeral program that I have found was 59. I have not found any prior to 59. I have found, I have seen funeral programs that basically it's about some of the people who passed away. They was born in 1888. I found those type of years. That was really good because I'm like, oh my God, this person was born in 1888, 1889, and died in, 1930, something like that. But whatever it is, it was just good to see. And it's just, everybody want a funeral program when you go to a funeral, especially people who like to save them. And a lot of people have a collection, and they'll tell you about that collection. Okay. Preserving our history through funeral programs. I just want to say I'm very pleased and happy to announce that Richardson's Funeral Home in Amet, Louisiana, have a collection at the Center for Southeast Studies at Southeastern. So we're getting ready to donate another 585 funeral programs. So and not only that, we're adding something new. There was a couple of books that we'll be adding to that was information about the deceased person. So, and I think the earliest book went back to 2004. Yeah, 2000. Okay, no, 2000. This 2000, yeah. 2000 to about 2008 is about what that index is. What can funeral programs tell us? Well, it depends on the informant. It depends on the person who is given the information about that deceased person. And oftentimes that can be a task. One, because it's hard on the loved ones, the surviving loved ones. It's emotional. But I have found that some people have written their own funeral program. They have picked out the pallbearers, all those things, and what they want said about them. And the person who has to complete it only have to add in the date that the person passed away. And most of the time, the location is already picked for that person too. Because if a person take the time out to prepare their own funeral program, most of the times they'll go a step further and make their own prearrangements. And so that eliminates a lot of information. But the funeral program tells us a lot about the person, such as their date of birth, their parents' name, siblings, where that person lived, uh, if they was married, in many cases with the women, their maiden name, and where they will be buried and where they'll be funeralized, the occupation, and some of the things they did in their lifetime can be found in some. Now, I have found some may not have a lot of information, and sometimes that goes back to family members sometimes just don't know. I've heard people say, I just didn't know that was her name. We always call Titi, Aunt Sue, but we didn't know her name. And so especially what is grandmother's maiden name? Where was she from? Because when you go to fill out the form for the debt record, the informant is the person who would fill that information in. So it's something to think about, that's if you have family meetings and you discuss these type of things, well, it should. But as soon as I'm finished with this PowerPoint, I'm going to show you what we have found I want you to see the collection yourself. So we'll go to some of the collections. African American cemeteries. Oh yeah, what a good topic. This particular headstone that you are looking at belonged to someone in the Wright family. And I found, I was taken to this cemetery by a man named Lee Warner, who's, bless his heart, Lee is one of those people that will go and maintain the cemetery. I just find him to be the keeper of those sacred places. He's going to make sure the grass is maintained and those, he knew what this cemetery was, and he invited me out to see this. I think it's been over 10 years now, and it was in the woods, and I'm more than sure that it may be probably in worse condition right now. But I did see a lot of the headstones. A lot of headstones was there, and we took pictures of those headstones. But there was a lot of Wright family members in that cemetery. And as you can see in this particular photograph, we're there. We are walking in the woods. And for some reason, I just didn't think about snakes. I didn't think about anything. I just was out there. Something could have been easy for hiding under all those thick leaves, but we had to go. I wanted to see it. Another thing that I do want to talk about is the importance of placing the headstones on a grave. That's very important to me. And I hope that it become important to other people. I found some headstones in an earlier time. We could see the person who put it there. They didn't have money, but they made one. And to me, that was so meaningful because you're actually looking at a headstone that someone's loved one made for them. My grandfather is one of those people. He made the headstones for a lot of his brothers that was buried in Big Zion. He made one for his father and his grandfather. And I was so happy for that because when I found that he made those headstones because he couldn't afford them, and just seeing his writing, their names. And I want to thank my colleague who was very creative and made more headstones. I had about 15 headstones need to be put on graves. I think we have about 10 up right now. What happened to the colored schools? What happened to all the photographs, all the trophies, all the documents, all the information, anything about the history of those schools? So when I come across a photograph, I feel like a child in a toy factory because I feel like I'm looking at a little piece of the past, you know. And then especially if somebody can identify some of the people in the photograph. Well, 4 people have been identified in this photograph, and my mother's sister was one. And this was the Amite Color School in Amite, Louisiana, in a little town called Butlertown. And that's another history right there that needs to be talked about, is the history of how some of these towns got their names. The color school, the Amite Color School, this was the class of 1946. The Tangipahoa Parish Color School, Training School, Tangipahoa Parish Training Color School, a color training school. In Kentwood, Louisiana, that's where this school was located at. The West Side High School, at that time, there was the Rams. And this is the basketball team. And my father identified a lot of these women on here. So did my mom, young ladies, so did my mom. Matter of fact, there's a couple of this family members. Now, this photograph, this was part of O.W. Dillon School too. Some photographs I found for O.W. Dillon School was at the University in Virginia. All right, Black farmers and their land. And I do want to talk about something that I'm learning so much about through Bernice Bennett, who is a strong advocate for the Black homesteaders. And as of today, I'm proud to say she has 67 stories. And I know that I contribute 2 stories to the National Park Services on one of my ancestors and one of my cousin's ancestors. And so Black farmers and their land. Land meant everything to our people because it meant to them some form of freedom, some form of self-sufficiency. They was being just self-sufficient, growing their own food, tending their own livestock. It was just a way of life. When before the wagon, hold on 1 minute, give me 1 minute. Before the wagon, there was a mule. And a young man back in those times was identified by his truck and owning a piece of land. Not looking at owning tennis shoes. He wanted his own. It seems to be that what they wanted back then at the age of 18, 20 is totally different than what you see young people want today and what young people seem to be deemed to be important. Back in that time, land was important. That meant your freedom. That meant you had a place to call home, and they worked that land. And I was happy that I spent some quality time talking to some of the farmers, meeting them, because when I came along and started researching outside of my family, meeting these other people, they was in their 80s then. So a lot of them was in their 70s, their 80s. So we have lost a lot. It's not that many left. So the younger generation that's forming, some of them are a descendant of a farmer. So I'm glad for those that's holding on to the concept, especially when we're looking at the food prices are going up and people are afraid that the stores are going to run out of food. One thing about the people, our ancestors who lived in the rural communities, they did not worry about running out of food, because unlike their relatives who went up north, some of them found themselves in line, in different lines at the soup kitchen. But in the rural communities, no, they grew their own vegetables. They had a bordering system. I interviewed one of Mr. J.D. Atkins' wife, two of his daughters, and they talked about their father had a packing shed. And when some of the Black farmers would not get the right price, or they would be price gouging with them and trying to cheat them, most of the Black farmers would go to Mr. J.D. Atkins. And Mr. J.D. Atkins would either buy the produce or take it to the French market in New Orleans and get them a better price. And just listening to his daughters talk about, he had his own truck. And so this is the history that needs to be talked about, needs to be revealed. There's a lot of emphasis that's put on sports in smaller communities, and we're not putting the emphasis on these important facts of history that we need to know and that play a major role in understanding who we are today and paying the respect to our ancestors that is rightfully due them. We should do that and teach the young people. Everybody who know anything about Ponchatoula, you know that Ponchatoula is the strawberry capital. It's one of the largest festivals that a lot of people travel to Tangipahoa Parish to see, to attend the Strawberry Festival. I didn't realize until I started searching around that there was so many photographs on sharecroppers who were strawberry pickers in this parish. And I found most of the pictures at the Library of Congress. A lot of the photographs I saw was Independence. There was the sharecroppers lived in Independence, Hammond, and Ponchatoula. You may find some here and there with Amet, Louisiana. But I just wanted to share these photographs to give people an idea. Pictures are there. Just don't assume that it's not there. Start searching and it'll come to you. Another fascinating story in the Louisiana, Florida parishes are the midwives. You hear people talk about, oh yeah, my mother was born by a midwife. She didn't have a birth certificate, or she had a delayed affidavit stating her age. But the history of the midwives are so important because sometimes most of the time, it was the only medical attention that Black people would get. And I do know Mother Mandy Wheat, the lady that's sitting to my far right with the coat on, she was a herbalist too. So not only was she the midwife, she would go out there like most of these women. They can recognize the herbs, whether it be natural herbs that grow in the wild, or if they had to plant it. But these women was very valuable to our community. And I do know that the oral history that was told to me said that Mother Mandy Wheat, she served a lot of Italians in this community and a lot of white families too. I was happy that her grandson shared a lot of information with me. Pictures tell stories. I have been very fortunate, very blessed to have collected so many beautiful photographs throughout the years. And some of them dates back to, I would say, 1880. But I think my cousin Montero Harrell, she has photographs that's on tin plates, like the little tin plates. She have those. And so when we researched that was right after the slavery era. So she has a couple of those and they are in good condition. But whenever a person finds pictures, oh, wow, you're really, really happy. That's all I'm going to say. That's the story about the men I haven't found any women that served in World War II. I haven't found any yet. But the men who fought for this country, it's our story. We're supposed to tell it. I do want to say that whenever I go to St. Helena and I'm looking at, there's like this little marker, historic marker they have. And when you look at a lot of men, it's men in the white community. So I think at this time, some of these names that needs to be added, because I did find through a lot of the military records that some of these men received some very important medals. And so I think that should be added to some of those historical markers as well. It's very important that we think about that or work towards that. Not just think about it, but work towards it. This is one of my favorite photographs in my family. And I'm sorry if I can't answer your questions, but if you put those questions in the chat room, or if you put them, I will answer your questions, because I'm operating it by myself. And if I go and try to do something else, I'm gonna lose my concentration. So I just want to be able to share this information tonight with you all. This is one of my favorite pictures. And this is a picture of my family. My great-grandmother, my maternal great-grandmother, Emma. Now, her husband had passed away, and she had her first child at 13. So could that be her son? We don't know, but she did. She was 13 years old in her first child. And my grandfather, with the bow tie on, I can identify several people. And that's what's important, is to be able to not just have the picture, but to identify some of the people, if not all of them. I know the two ladies sitting next to her, her daughter Bertha sitting directly next to her, and her daughter Ella. Now on the end, this person here, I really haven't been able to identify him or have anybody that was able to identify him. But my grandfather Jasper, his brother Palmer, and this is Shelton Harrell, very tall man. So that's and I would love to know who this little boy is on the porch, but it had to be a grandchild that stayed very close. Look at these beautiful photographs. Isn't that just beautiful? And when you look at it, look at those ladies' waistline and how they're dressed. And it wasn't, excuse me, dressing like that just to go to church. That's how they dress, just leaving out their house. Going downtown to town. That was a big deal to go to town. And they got dressed up to go to town. Now, I know the family member of the two ladies that's dressed so beautiful. And look, we got to think about this. Yes, a lot of clothes they purchased, but a lot of clothes, those women handmade those clothes and those dresses. It was just a talent back there for women, And the lady sitting down, she was one of the first Black school teachers in the church, Luella Butler Temple, and her husband, John Temple. Let me go to my next one. Okay, come on. Let's do what we gotta do. Hope my screen didn't lock up on me, but we'll fix that. I got it. All right, I love this picture here because this is Robert Zanders, and he was what Louis Armstrong was to New Orleans, is what Robert Zanders was to this parish. And then that's the Chapman brothers. I have found 3 singing groups, but someone told me about the James singing group that was in Arcola, Roseland, in that area. So this history is very important that we document it, we preserve it, and we share it. Share it, share it, share it. I believe in sharing. I believe in whatever we're going to do, we're going to share it. That's very important. The military record, I want to share this with you too, because what I want to show is the World War, when they went to do the military draft, like they had to start registration of draft cards. Look at this. My grandfather was living at Route Box 41, Amet, Louisiana, in Tangipahoa Parish. He was 29 years old at that time. His date of birth, January 29th, 1911, Louisiana. And the person who would have known where his whereabouts would be, his wife, Josephine Dorita. Look at that. It even states her middle name, Dorita. And he was employed, he was self-employed. That's something else we learned. Wait a minute. I know I got this in me to be work for self, be self-employed. I'm self-driven. Where's this coming from? If we go back and look in our history, we may see that, okay, that explains it. Grandmother was like that. Grandfather was like that. But to see his signature, that was really good. That was really good for me to see that. Cool to see that. I can't say enough about these history keepers who passed so much to me. My great aunt, Ella Keat Harrell, Ella Harrell Keat Harrison. She married twice. My mother, my first cousin, my maternal first cousin, who just passed away, not even a month yet. She gave me a lot of oral history. My mom gave me oral histories, photographs. She was a wealth of information. And my mother's brother, Raymond Harrell, he was the keeper of history and photographs. And at the very bottom, my cousin Adam Gordon, who supported this work from day one, traveling down the highways with me, going to work on different things. That was him. I can't forget Dr. Garrison, who we lost last year. He was instrumental in sharing with me some of the images for the Ponchatoula Color School and putting me in contact with other people who would be very instrumental in helping to preserve the histories in these areas. And Eddie Brazil and Joanne are the two that I was saying really helped to organize the funeral programs at Richardson's funeral home that was donated for future studies. And also, thank you. Joanne really, she said, look, we got to do this. We have to do it. We're not going to throw these away. And I am so glad they didn't. Now, for anybody that wants to learn any more about some of the African-American history, there's my book, The Images of America, African Americans in Tangipahoa and St. Helena Parish. There's Bernice Alexander Bennett book, Tracing Their Steps. And she's talking about her grandfather, Peter Clark, and his land that he owned. And then there's Dr. Ava Baham. She is also the author of Images of America, African Americans in Covington. Okay, so much for that. But I do want to share something else with you. I got enough time to pull that up. I want to pull up those funeral programs so that you can see African American funeral programs. Sad when you have glasses and you can't see, huh? That's the truth. I have glasses and I have a hard time. Yeah. Okay, let's see. That's all right. We're going to get it up, though. That's for sure. Okay. Let me just share the screen with you so you can see. Always good to share things. All right. Okay. So this is the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. I'm going to go ahead and browse the collection. And here it is. So you know what I like about this? You can click on, you can see the entire funeral program. And it tells you the title, the subject, the description, which is the name of the person. The creator is and here's the source, Cheryl Forbes Montgomery. I know Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you. I want to go through some more. So far it's 585 that we donated there. Okay, let's look at this one here. Alfred Broomfield. The Broomfields is a very large family, very large family. Okay, so here it is. It once again a description, his name, his birthday, the date that he died, when the service is going to be, where he's going to be buried at, the location, the contributors, Richardson's Funeral Home Collection, the type, image, PDF form, and the source. Because, and the reason they say source with me is because when I get it, I just don't donate them to them like that. I will take and really build a database so everybody can know exactly how many I have. And I know through putting them in alphabetical order, just doing that, it was just a great thing. It's time consuming, but it was worth it. So I just want to give you an idea where you can go on there and those funeral programs. I know sometimes people say, can I get a copy? Well, you can always send them to this page if it's there. I will look. If there was at Richardson's Funeral Home, let me just pull this one up because this is my mom. Yeah. So nobody have to ask for one. And I'm going to show you something too. So if you click on the little arrow, it gives you everything. It gives you the inside. It's just loading itself. Let's let it load. Okay, let me see what's going on. Okay, here it is. You see, it gives you everything. See? So it took us a while to do it, but we got it done. And due to COVID, like some people was really out, they were sick and they couldn't, the workers were slow. So I do want to show you these Richardson's Funeral Home Collection and Southeastern. Give me 1 minute. I can get it right here. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, I'm about to share that with you. So you can see what this one looked like. Now, at the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies, you will not see the original document. You would physically have to go to the center or either call and have them to mail it to you for a fee. But as you can see, like folder, it's all in the boxes. It's so well organized that this will be the first time that the staff at Richardson's Funeral Home will get an opportunity to see just how organized the collection really is. So box one, and that's all the ones in the alphabet A. Let me see. Okay. And there you see. See, it goes by folders. So you don't have to really look around and say, hey, it's all mixed up. No, it's not. It's in alphabetical order. So I just want to share that with you with that collection. You see those Broomfields? The Broomfields are a large family. So with that, got a couple more minutes. I do want to say this to you that if you want to learn how to do genealogy research, I suggest that you start talking to the oldest person in your family. Talk to them. Get as much information as you possibly can from them. Record it. Write it down. Record it and organize your files really good. If you have it on your phone, take it off your phone when you get home or the first thing in the morning. Because if something happened and you lose that file and it's not in the clouds, you can be very sorry that you did it like that, because you may not be able to get that interview back. And ask if that person have any documents, any records, any photographs, anything that can really help you with your research. So exhaust all your efforts talking to family members, getting information so that when you do start to look at the outsources like Ancestry, Family Search, you have the right names. Because a lot of times people say, oh, it's the wrong name, I don't really know. And I'm hearing more now that a lot of people are saying, well, all the old folks, they're gone, they're dead. So are we that generation that don't know anything, but we want to pass something down to our children? But I do understand it too, because back in those days, children didn't sit around adults and talk. So if there was something going on, you didn't know it. They was really tight-lipped. They didn't discuss everything in front of children. They didn't talk about adult things to children. So this generation between the ages of 60 and 70, sometimes they really don't know much. But whatever they know, try to take that and at least write it down and start researching it, especially with the names, because you can be on a wild goose chase for a name that is not even associated with your family history. Visit a library in every parish that you visit for your family research. Go to the courthouse. Look at the marriage records. Look at the index. Look at all the names. All the surnames that have that same name that you have. Don't rule it out, because you don't know, you're trying to learn. And then when you're looking at it, something might come back and say, I remember them talking about Aunt Bertha, Uncle Johnny, or someone. It'll start coming back to you, but at least start. Especially now that they're talking about all this critical race theory and don't want a lot of things to be told and a lot of things to be said, but history is history. And we want to know our history. Our history is important. People need to know who owned the land. I'm trying to get my, all right, there they go. Who owned that's why I can't see, because my glasses are crooked sometimes. Who owned the land? Whose name is the land in? What's the transactions that's taking place on the land? And sometimes, let me tell you something, it's not easy when you talk about heir property, but genealogy will lead you into all of that. And if you have land that has been in your family for a long time and, do everything in your power to protect it, please. I don't have to tell you. You see the prices of homes are going up. You see the prices of how land is going up. So we just have to be better stewards at what our ancestors worked so hard, the sacrifices they made for us. That wasn't easy. I heard somebody say, well, land was only 50 cents an acre. Well, honey, do you know how long and how hard they had to work for that 50 cents an acre? But the fact that they saw you, they wanted to leave you something. They want to give you something. And can you at least have enough respect to say, I owe it to them to keep this land, to learn about the legal descriptions, to do the research, all those things that they would be proud to know that you kept the land in the family. You kept the family artifacts. You keep in the family history. You're not selling the land off, but that's what genealogy will teach you. It will definitely teach you that. So if you would like to be a guest on the show and you live in the Florida parishes and you have something that you would like to share, please email me at nurturingourroots@gmail.com. That's nurturingourroots@gmail.com. And so I just want to give you an overview of some of the research that I'm finding and how those family histories is helping me to discover a lot about the local history. So I just want to say, share it, create blogs, create Facebook pages, create a dialogue with the family to talk about the family history, because what it is, a lot of people, they say, well, we heard that land was taken from our family, but you don't know anything until you start researching. So I just want to say thank you all for joining me here. And I'm happy that we have a space that we can come and we can share history. And there's a sense of pride that goes with that. It helped to foster this self-esteem that's needed. Because when you know where you come from, you know who you are, it's a different feeling because I just want to close by saying that we can't be defined as just that we dominate in sports or we dominate in entertainment. There is so much more that we have contributed, and we need to stand on that. We need to embrace and celebrate doctors and attorneys and business people in the family, in our communities. We need to celebrate because that's important. That's important. And this is what genealogy teach you. There was a lot of those societies that those women and those men belonged to, and they was building a community. So I just want to thank you for joining me here. And next, in February, I may come back on twice that month because I really want to go into some deep history as it relates to Black history in the Florida parishes. So thank you for joining me right here on Exploring African American History in the Louisiana, Florida parishes. Thank you for joining.